There are approximately 194 countries or regions or principalities or what have you in the world to move to. So how do you make the determination of what country to move to if you want to move out of your country and move to a better country? In this video, I'm going to give you the exact parameters. I have a bunch of them that I used to pick the ideal country for me when I moved out of the collapsing USA. And you can copy these parameters to ensure that the decision you make on the country for you is the best country for you. I personally moved to Dubai when I moved out of the collapsing USA, but at the end of this video, I will give you the country that I would have moved to if Dubai was not an option, based on all these parameters. I am Caleb Jones, this is Alpha Male 2.0. I make an international six-figure, location-independent income while dating multiple attractive women, and I show men like you how to do the same thing. So, here are the parameters that I used when I did my research in terms of what country that was best for me to move to. And there are a lot of parameters. It's not just, do I like the people? Or do I like the women? Or is the weather nice? Or did the weather happen to be nice when I visited that country? Or I heard the country was really cool from a guy on YouTube or the internet, therefore I should probably move to that country. No, you need to make your own determination, but you need to have several criteria that you use in order to make this decision, not just one or two. So here are the 5 criteria that I use to pick the ideal country for me. Number 1, top of the list, at least for me, was decent economics. And that means several things. That means the country is economically growing, or at least economically staying okay. That means that the long-term and mid-term future of that country economically was not in question. The challenge with the Western world, as I've said millions of times, is that the entire Western world is in a state of collapse. Every Western country just about is going to be worse off in the future than it is today. United States, Canada, Europe, all these countries and regions are collapsing slowly, and so clearly I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to be in a place that was doing well economically, could do better in the future, or at least maintain its spot in terms of long-term future. That also means in terms of economics governmentally and economics in terms of the citizenry. For example, the country of Australia, their government doesn't have that much debt as compared to the Western world. But the people, the consumers of Australia, have massive amounts of debt. So that's probably not a good place to move to.
Good day, mate.
The economic conditions are not very favorable. Most countries in the world have embraced some form of either corporatism, in the case of the United States or Japan, or socialism, in the case of just about everybody else. I mean, geez, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, just about all of Europe. Most countries in the world have embraced this. Now, certainly since the cerveza sickness problems of the last year and a half, many countries, if not most countries, have embraced some sort of authoritarian rules and regulations regarding how to manage that disease. You have to factor that in as well. So the economic conditions of that country and how free that country is comparatively to other countries, I think that's a very important factor. Now, one thing really quick. I'm going to give you these criteria, but these criteria may not weigh as strongly for you as they did for me, so that's fine. You can weigh them in different ways. For me, economics was a very, very strong factor for me. Maybe you're a guy who doesn't really care about economics. Maybe you're a young guy who's just looking to get laid. Or maybe you're an older guy and you've kind of retired or you're semi-retired. You don't really care about the economics of your country. That's perfectly fine. I'm just giving you the entire picture here, and you decide how important these criteria are for your particular scenario. Number 2 criteria that I used was low odds of war or civil unrest. So war and civil unrest are 2 different things. Let me define each one. Civil unrest is not civil war. Civil unrest is when you have regular rioting in the streets in certain cities. As I talked about in my videos last year, the United States in particular has entered into an era where Americans who stay in the United States are just going to have to be accustomed to regular civil unrest. Not civil war. That's not going to happen in the United States. The average man, the average person is too fat, too drug addicted, too beta, too scared, and too lazy to actually pick up a gun and go shoot people. That's not going to happen. But what is going to happen in the United States, particularly the United States, as well as eventually places like Canada, Western Europe, places like that, is regular civil unrest like what happened last summer in the United States. That's just going to become a regular occurrence now. You're going to regularly have riots and violence and blood in the streets in major cities all over the United States and in many other areas of the collapsing Western world. So clearly, if a country had that kind of problem, then I wasn't interested. Now, if they have one riot because of the cerveza sickness or something like that, and then they never have them again, that's okay. That's an exception to the rule. I'm talking about regular civil unrest. If a country is kind of known for that, United States, then that's probably not a country that I'm going to move to in terms of my criteria. Low odds of war. Now here's the criteria that I have used. I've talked about this several times before. I did not want to move to a country that was adjacent to a hostile neighbor. So what do I mean by that? Here's a good example. I love the country of Georgia. The country of Georgia is amazing. It's one of the best countries in the world, in my opinion, one of the best countries to move to. If you want to move to Georgia, I think you should move to Georgia. But the challenge with Georgia, the one problem I have with Georgia, is that it is bordering a hostile neighbor. It is bordering Russia, and that's a country that, as I've talked about before, likes to invade other countries whenever Putin feels like it, and that's kind of a problem. A lot of countries in the world are pretty good, but they have literal adjacent neighbors to countries that are hostile to that country. I moved to the UAE. The United Arab Emirates is in the Middle East, but it borders only two nations, Oman and Saudi Arabia, both of which are very friendly to the UAE and are strong allies of the UAE, so I don't have to worry about this problem about having any hostile direct neighbors. Now, true, in just about any country in the world you could think of, you could look at a world map and say, well, 2 countries over, or a bay over, or the ocean over, you have a hostile place. You have that, Caleb. Yes, I'm not talking about perfection here. I'm talking about getting things as best as you can. There's always hostile countries in any region. That's certainly true. I'm talking about adjacent neighbors. So that's one of the criteria I used to choose my country. If it had a hostile adjacent neighbor, I crossed it off the list. Number 3 criteria that I used is low or zero terrorism. So as you are probably already aware, if you live anywhere in Western Europe, or you live anywhere in the United States, terrorism is kind of a norm now, certainly in parts of Europe. And if that was the case, I didn't want to live there. I like to live in countries that mind their own damn business. I've talked about this many times. Do you see a lot of terrorists going after neutral countries? No. Do you see a lot of terrorists going after people in Switzerland? Do you see a lot of terrorists going after people in Hong Kong? No. You see it all over the place in places like the UK, United States, France, these big countries that have big militaries that stick their noses into other countries' business and can't leave other people alone. So that was one of the big factors I wanted. I didn't want to leave a country that had a terrorism problem and exchange it for another country with a terrorism problem. That didn't make any sense to me. Now, I got to talk really quick about the 2% rule. If you don't know what the 2% rule is, you should click this video right here. It's very important for the Alpha Male 2.0, and that is if something has less than a 2% chance of occurring, you don't worry about it and you proceed. So when I talk about low odds of terrorism, I'll get guys say, but Caleb, your odds of dying from a terrorist attack are less than 2%. Correct. I'm not talking about me getting involved personally in a terrorist event. What I'm talking about are all the insane, bullshit, authoritarian measures these terrorism countries take to prevent terrorism. Have you flown on a plane in the United States lately? You actually walk through a scanner that scans a picture of your naked body. That's literally true. All the hassles you have at airports, all the hassles you have at borders because of damn terrorism. Countries that don't have terrorism problems, I go to Paraguay a lot, they don't care. They leave you alone because they're not worried about terrorists. So the reason I want low odds of terrorism is not because I'm worried about being involved in terrorism. I'm not. I'm talking about all the authoritarian measures the governments take that directly affect my quality of life and my personal individual freedoms. That's why. Very important distinction. Number 4 on this list is a climate that I can tolerate. Now, I made that clear because I didn't want an ideal climate. If all I care about was an ideal climate, I would move to California, which is one of the worst places in the world for the Alpha Male 2.0 to live, literally, both in terms of dating and economics and taxes and all those things. So if all I gave a shit was climate, then I would move to a horrible place like California, but it wasn't. So I was flexible on climate. It just had to have a climate that I could tolerate. If it's a climate that I just couldn't stand, I had to cross it off the list. Great example of this, unfortunate example, was Singapore. I love Singapore. I would love to live in Singapore. I would have moved to Singapore. Singapore, for me, is just about perfect across the board, but it's hot and humid year-round. It's right on the equator, and it's not only hot, it's also hot and humid year-round. It's one of those cities where you walk outside, and within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you are so drenched with sweat, you gotta duck back into a building and cool off and dry off again. That's just the lifestyle there. I can't do that. Not year round. I can't do it. Now here in Dubai, it gets somewhat humid during the summer months, just 3 months a year. Not a problem. I can either deal with it or I can leave. But in a place like Singapore where it was year round, I just couldn't make that work. There might be other places that are very cold for you. Some guys want to move to Russia because of all the women there, but they don't like the cold weather, so they cross Russia off the list. So it had to be a climate that I could tolerate. Not love, not think is ideal, because there are other factors more important to me than climate, but climate that I could actually tolerate, that I could handle on a year-round basis, or at least most of the year, as is the case here in Dubai. Criteria number 5, not adjacent to a strong trading partner that will have economic problems. What do I mean by this? Well, some Americans think they're being very smart by leaving America and moving to Canada. No. Is Canada as worse off as America economically? No. Canada is much less badly off. It's not well off, but it's much less badly off in terms of economics than the United States. Certainly their banks in Canada are much better. That's true. The problem is one of Canada's biggest trading partners is the United States. So when the United States collapses, and it will in our lifetimes, what's going to happen to Canada? Canada's fucked. So it doesn't make any sense, if you want to move to avoid a future collapse, to move from one collapsing Western country to another collapsing Western country. Same thing with guys in the UK who moved to like Portugal or Spain. What? No, that's dumb. Unless you just love Portugal or Spain for some reason, external of economics, I guess go ahead. So one of the criteria that I used was not only to not be adjacent to a hostile neighbor, but also not be adjacent or reliant upon, in terms of trade policy and trade, a collapsing Western country. That's why it makes no sense to me to move from the US to Canada. Doesn't make any sense. Canada is screwed when America goes down, and America's going down. It's going down faster now than it was pre-cerveza sickness. It's going down fast. Same thing with Europe. This is also an example of why I didn't move to Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, and there are a lot of guys who really defend Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, I know this is a shock, Eastern Europe is in Europe. Europe is collapsing. When Western Europe goes down, it'll go down before America. What do you think is going to happen to Eastern Europe, whose primary trading partners are Western Europe? They're going to have major problems. They may not have as much problems as places like Germany, that's true, but they're going to have problems. So I had to pay attention to where are these possible countries that I would move to, where were they getting their money, where were they getting their trade, and what was the region like in terms of not only violence and war, but also economics. The last criteria, number 6, is a really simple one: women who were decently attractive. One of the reasons I did not move to the Philippines. I love Filipino people, I love Filipino women, I just don't find them very attractive. That's also one of the reasons I didn't move to China. There are a lot of reasons I didn't move to China, but one of them was I'm just not attracted to Chinese women. Now, if you are attracted to Chinese women, great. If you think Filipino women are beautiful, that's wonderful. God bless. Go move to the Philippines. But I wanted a country where, as an alpha male 2.0 who will be non-monogamous for the rest of my life, meaning I will be having sex with women other than my wife for the rest of my life. That means I will occasionally, on a semi-regular basis, perhaps need to bring new women into my sex life. I wanted to make sure I was in a country where the women were decently attractive. Or in some cases, if you move to like the Caribbean or places like that, women are visiting those countries, because some guys do this. Many women who are attractive are visiting those countries, and then they leave. That could also be a factor. That could work too. But you want to make sure, at least in my opinion, that wherever you're moving to, the women are attractive to you. Whatever your type is, every guy is a different type. Some guys like Latinas. Some guys like skinny girls. Some guys like blonde girls. Some guys like tall girls. Be aware of what your type is, and be aware of the women where you're moving to. You don't want to move to a place that is great economically, great for business, great for taxes, great for climate, and the women are just not the kind of women that turn you on. Probably not a good idea. Certainly if you're the alpha male 2.0 and you follow my lifestyle design models where you don't do monogamy and you'll be having sex with women other than your primary woman probably for the rest of your life. Kind of an important factor. If you like this content, you need to do some things. You need to subscribe to this channel, like this video, hit that notification bell when you subscribe, and leave a comment even if you disagree with me. The more engagement I get on these videos, the more of these videos I will do. If you're interested in moving out of your country, you can click the link below or go to escapeplancourse.com to get in on either the free webinar I'm doing on how to move out of your country, which is June 30th, 2021, or if you're watching this video after that, you can still click the same link and that'll get you to the course. You want to move out of the collapsing West. Don't waste time on this stuff. Figure out your ideal country and go there. Make a plan. With my course, it'll walk you through the entire process, including how to figure out the best countries for you, far beyond what we covered in this video, plus things like residency, logistics, all that stuff. You can get the course, click the link below, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.